I could probably also tell you that if you looked at the case law across the United States that has to do with land use and zoning, there's probably more court cases about non-conforming uses and the continuation or the abandonment or the expansion or the intensification than probably any other zoning issue. It's very, very complicated. Maybe signs.
It's controversial.
It's very controversial.
So, Alan, you don't like this. Can you give an example of, like, one reason why?
I'm concerned that it opens the door for someone to be able to try to make the argument that, you know, my expansion is somehow not going to be a detriment to the neighborhood, and that, you know, I'm going to improve my lot, but I got to make my building twice as big.
And my plan in front of you is in compliance with the Plan of Conservation and Development.
Right.
Because that's what you're asking. It's one of our aspirational goals.
Well, it does say a significant and identifiable community benefit.
Right, and what will happen, is that every individual who stands before the zoning commission will insist that what I'm going to do is going to you know, benefit, be a vast improvement to my neighborhood, to my property, my neighborhood, and the community as a whole, and you've got to approve it. And you know what? If you don't approve it, because it's consistent with the plan, it's consistent with your regulations, if you deny it, I just might appeal your decision. And I think the idea of trying to maintain nonconformities under certain circumstances isn't necessarily a bad idea. I'm not sure that I'd want a policy in the plan development that states that it's a good idea.
And or it can happen with every lot, every
non-conforming situation.
Okay, I got to think about this one, guys.
I understand. I think Alan and I would share the same goal for the end result, which is the non-conforming use becomes compatible with its neighborhood. The challenge that I find as a practitioner is that for 80 years it's not happened. So why do we, you know, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. But for the communities that have done this, the incremental things that happen. People can go to the ZBA for variances to allow all sorts of stuff to happen. And the ZBA can't condition the variance on the provision of a buffer or fencing or landscaping or anything else. So the issue becomes a yes-no decision rather than, oh, if you want to do that, then you're going to have to do this. Right? If the neighbors complain about trucks at all hours of day and night, or the dumpster pickup at 7 a.m. or whatever, the issue is then, you know what? You're going to fix this if you want to do that. And the issue is it does, and it's worked. So I think it's a scary situation, and I'm not sure how Alan and Bob and you have much more insight, if you will, into the development system in Bristol and how it would work. So I wanted to bring it to your attention. I'm going to flag this or box this and say, you know, not decided at this time or something, and let's move on. Guys, we're at 9 o'clock. If we can get through the next page, which is these little pictures again, we're good to go for tonight. Is that okay? Hang in there a little bit longer?
Oh, I want to stay at least until midnight.
Well,
midnight, it'll be close to see if I can
midnight tonight or tomorrow?
No, tonight. It'll be a challenge for me to get to work.
Remember, it's midnight someplace now.
Yeah, everywhere, yeah.
Okay, so on page 15, item number 24, talked about small neighborhood shopping areas in the northwest and southwest corners of town.
And my recollection why this was put in was, and this in a way kind of goes back to the whole idea of these, I would say, non-conforming uses. You have these two large residential sections in the city that have developed and grown in the last 20, 30 years, more than the northeast and the southeast. So these have been the more dynamic parts of the city to experience growth in the last 10, 20 years. And neither of those neighborhoods has any that I could think of as any kind of, for lack of a better term, centrally located small neighborhood commercial area. I think maybe that's changed a little bit since this plan was done. For example, the northwest, you have where Martino's is out on Route 6, which is kind of at the edge of that northwest area. You have a kind of a small neighborhood oriented shopping area. But I think the intention was that at some point in the free market, somebody comes along and says, you know, there's this huge population in the northwest section of the city, and there's no neighborhood convenience store. I'd like to try to get a zone change so at, you know, right in the center of this area on Clark Avenue or Matthew Street, I can seek a rezoning to a business zone so I can put in this kind of use. Okay, so they make an application, that comes back to this commission for a referral. You look at the plan of development and go, well, we got nothing here that supports that. The guy goes back to the zoning commission, and the zoning commission says, there's nothing in the city's plan that foresaw the possibility of that. And you get into the whole issue of spot zoning. And there are two issues associated with spot zoning, or two things that make spot zoning spot zoning. One is it's a teeny tiny piece of property, but the second is there's nothing in your plan of conservation development that supports the spot. So if you've got something in your plan that says, yeah, we think that, you know, without identifying a specific location, that at some point in time it may make sense for somebody to want to have a small neighborhood shopping area in an appropriate location, and it's not going to be on 20 acres, it's going to be on 2 acres or 1 acre, and you've provided the planning basis for that, then their ability to get a zone change to do that is increased. Now, they may be suggesting it in a location that's just bad, but you get to see that as part of a referral. So that was the rationale for that. They feel it's not needed anymore. Before. Well, again, I'm thinking of Martino's, that little mixed-use building at Clark and Terryville Avenue. That's
right on Route 6, right?
Right on Route 6. Right, and that's really kind of like at the south end of that neighborhood.
Well, you've got Buster's, which has been there
right
on the street a long time, so it's kind of a continuation of that.
Sure.
That area, but I'll tell you, I mean, I've got a vacant lot, I got a building lot next to me.
Oh,
I'm sure my neighbors would just be really excited if I threw out, you know,
well, they're going to have
7-Eleven in
but
there
they're going to have to change. But the whole idea is that there's nothing zoned for that, so you got to make a zone change. And the fact that this is in here doesn't support any zone change, but it supports the zone change. Let's say the Bristol Wellness Center closes up shop. That's at the corner of Matthews and Clark. It's a fairly major intersection. And someone comes in and says, I want to put a little convenience store there. I want to put a big convenience store there.
Full-blown supermarket.
Well,
no, don't even think full blown. I have next gone through Walcott, there's the Pat's IGA. That's just a small grocery store.
I'm thinking on Stafford Avenue.
yes,
The
that's a
little
perfect
neighborhood shopping
example.
center across from...
Mulkey Street.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's the kind of development we're talking about. And in the right location, it may make some sense.
In the right location.
Well,
Yes.
but that will ultimately be decided by the zoning commission if they were to change the zone to allow that.
That's just by leaving this in there, right?
It allows somebody to start that conversation going, because this is indicative that that's an idea that may have some merit.
Well, that's interesting. It brings the conversation around to, it may never happen, but
Hasn't happened yet.
since it's neighborhood oriented, I think there's a way already to judge whether or not that's the case.
Well, I
as
think,
opposed to a bigger one that's going to attract people from all over.
and I think, for example, well, you have there's a neighborhood business zone. I think if someone came in and said, I wanted a general business zone, they're probably not going to get an approval. Whereas if they come in and say, I want a neighborhood business zone on this 2 acres, well, if it's the right 2 acres, and there's something in the plan that says, you know, the concept, we support the concept. We may or may not support the specific location, but we support the concept of providing a neighborhood retail area for people in that neighborhood.
So the sense I'm getting is, okay, we're going to leave this one in?
Yes.
Okay, the second one deals with the possible, it's saying, let's reserve Route 229 for office and industrial uses and not let 229, the southern part of 229, turn into a retail or commercial strip. So limit future retail and commercial development along this portion of the corridor to those properties that are currently zoned for business.
You'll have to see it. Where's Batista Road?
It's just north of Superior Electric.
Okay.
What is sort of like this?
No, it's on the map.
And-
Program here. I'm getting a little tired.
Number 5.
And
Page 5, I'm sorry.
And my recollection from when that was established was the city there's a multi-million-dollar investment on Middle Street called ESPN. And the commission's feeling was that there are plenty of other opportunities for there to be commercial development elsewhere in the city, and that one of the ways you protect the investment in the industrial parks and ESPN is to encourage more of the same and discourage, you know, there's obviously retail business out there, but to encourage more and more and more out there.
I think it makes sense.
Good? Okay, next page. Basically, it's talking about limiting retail and commercial development along the Route 6 corridor, those properties that are currently zoned for business and that front on Route 6.
The commission has kind of dealt with this one recently,
Yes.
and my recollection is when you discussed it in a specific situation, you felt that it would be appropriate to discuss it in this context. And I'm referring to the True Value property, the one on the zone change on Collier Avenue. And the way, to remind you, the way that ended up being resolved is they did get a zone change. The zoning commission basically said, we'll make the zone change effective when you merge the lot on Collier Avenue with the lot on Route 6. And that was done. So that's now, that lot is now on, I mean, it's part of the development, it's part of the corner development, if you will. The house obviously is still where it is, but I think this commission, the zoning commission, felt that given that the orientation is still associated with the business use on Route 6, that you could live with the zone change.
16 Collier went away.
Right.
Right.
Correct. I mean, the house is still there.
Oh,
but-
no.
Right.
The address itself, the property was merged with the
Right.
the 742 Farmington or whatever it is.
Right.
I think Gary had some strong opinions on this application.
Yes.
I would.
So there's some strong words in here, the way it's currently worded right now.
And maybe that background was for Glenn because he wasn't privy to that recent
I
discussion.
appreciate it.
And again, I think the concern that the commission had in 2000 was that in the absence of some kind of policy about, you know, future retail commercial development along Route 6, you would start to get drift of business zoning down the side streets.
Right.
Exactly.
And then at some point, you know, you're not going to add on to the corner lot. It's going to be, well, now it's going to be down Collier, it's going to be down Columbus, or it's going to be down, you know, any number of those side streets. I think the commission's feeling it, at least at the time, was, no, it stays on Route 6. And again, I think that both this commission and the zoning commission have been a little liberal in their interpretation of that.
It will happen.
I understand. And so, limit gives you almost no wiggle room. And I was just thinking back to the conversation we just had about non-conforming. And the situation you just described on Collier made sense to me, because I thought there was a significant community benefit that could result from the consolidation of that, which could allow them to use buffering or provide parking or be a better neighbor. So I'm wondering whether this language is what the commission would propose to keep, or whether you want to say limit future retail commercial development along the Route 6 corridor to those properties that are currently zoned for business and that front on Route 6, and then say provide, or unless or provided or something, there is a significant and identifiable community benefit, such as improvements to the site's landscaping, signage, access, parking, lighting, design, buffering, or some other thing. So right now the word is just limit. And is that you guys have been through this recently, so I'm following your lead here.
Sure.
Is limit the word, or limit provided, or allow if?
If we allow if, do you think it's a good idea to provide examples?
I wouldn't say allow if. I would say limit unless. The words that I would use: limit rezoning. Unless you are going to show us some
examples of what you can do, or do we?
And this is an area that I would urge caution, and the reason being is that we'll get into this at our next meeting. I think it's important to understand that there's only so much retail spending power, buying power in the community. So when new businesses come along on Route 6, it takes businesses away, or business away from other places. And if we care about our downtown, and if we really want our downtown to succeed, then we have to be careful that we keep doing all the things that basically never allow the downtown to really kind of grow and blossom. So I'm not an advocate for expansion on Route 6. But I am an advocate for you guys having effective language that you think guides the city in a positive direction. So I'm going to try to help you get to what you think would work.
I guess my only concern about putting that, the carrot at the end about community benefit, I'm not sure what community benefit that really had. It allowed the proprietor, the owner of that business, to enhance his business and serve his customers. But it doesn't. Nothing about a buffer, nothing about, what is it that you're going to show?
Well, that was my question. Should we give examples of that, or because we get into
What if somebody came in?
You get into the subjective here.
What if somebody came in and made a proposal and said, I want to put in a 100,000 square foot building. I'm going to bring in 450 high-tech jobs for a new,
I don't even worry about what, just...
a really cool business that I got.
Where are they going to bring it?
And they want to put it on Route 6. But they're going to have to buy and use property that's not presently zoned for retail or commercial development.
No.
That, I think, would fall under something that benefits the community. And they have the plan for parking, and they have everything.
This is retail commercial, so you've described a situation which is dramatically different because it's more office technology, and that really is something that...
Well, let's just say it's an office building. Say they're providing financial services, and it falls into commercial. Let's just say it falls into commercial zoning, or commercial use.
Oh, but you get back to the question of...
Well, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because he's saying that if we put something in here that says that it's a substantial improvement to the community. So if you come up with that, without having that in there, and this is limited to only what's there now, then your hands are tied and you can't allow that type of commercial use, correct?
You can't prevent, the issue would be that the commission, based on this language in the plan, would send a negative referral to the zoning commission. If the zoning commission was going to do it, then they need a 2/3 vote to override.
Right.
So that's the only effect. It's not that this commission can't, but the statutory requirement is that the commission's report contain two elements to it. Number one is it consistent with the plan or not? And let's say, for example, the answer would be no, it's not consistent with the plan. The second part of the report is, does the commission favor it? And the issue could be, no, it's not consistent with the plan, but we weren't thinking we were going to get something like that. So we're in favor of what's proposed, it's just not consistent with the plan.
Okay.
And so the commission does have some wiggle.
There are ways around.
I think there can. I'm not uncomfortable with this. I want to make sure that you guys.
I'm not uncomfortable with it.
I think that, and it may be worth revisiting this, and I think it may be helpful to Glenn to talk with Bob and myself, and we can show him the instances, the few instances, but there have been instances where the zoning commission, not unlike what they did with the Collier Avenue property, where the commission has allowed commercial development onto the side street. And it may, and by Glenn seeing those circumstances, it may help him craft language that will acknowledge those kinds of situations, so that it's not just sort of this nebulous, whatever the community benefit is, that it's still tied into the way this commission, the zoning commission, have dealt with these issues. Because again, I think the big concern has been, we don't want the business zone marching down the side streets, and all of a sudden these residential side streets are filled with commercial traffic going to and from these businesses. But the commission has allowed it under conditions where, as you did with Collier Avenue, the orientation, the lot got bigger, but the orientation is still towards the business street. And there may be a way to craft that language into this.
We've been hanging around too long because you said exactly what I was going to say.
Ooh, it's good.
You did. Oh.
Ditto.
Okay.
Because again, in that particular instance, that was what made it more palatable, was that the orientation was towards the 6.
Right.
So I just said it again.
So I think the next one is basically talking about the section of Route 6 between downtown or Route 69 and the Plymouth line.
The Terryville Avenue.
Thank you.
And again, that's been, the commission's thinking back in 2000 was our major strip commercial development, the big box stores, is, from Burlington Avenue east out to Camp Street. That's where the big stuff is. The smaller, more neighborhood-oriented stuff is out on, any commercial development that's going to take place, like from West Street out to the Plymouth Town line, it's going to be the Busters and the big
Right.
the Dollar Liquor, and again, the more neighborhood-oriented stuff. This commission said the big stuff stays on one end, the smaller stuff stays on the other.
So my only concern with that is the old ND building, ND Parker building, out on Route 6.
Yeah, that's for sale or for rent.
Oh, but that's industrially zoned.
Okay, so we can see that.
So this seems like a very reasonable policy and program to me to continue, is that?
Yes.
Okay. So on the next page now, on the one with the pictures. The policy here, which is number 28, talked about evaluating developments along Route 6 in terms of their impacts on revitalization efforts in downtown. I think that's kind of significant because I do think that things that happen elsewhere in the community are going to have an impact on what we can or cannot do in our downtown. So I don't know what's the right place for it, what's the right statement. How do you guys, do you feel the verbs are good here? Do you think the statement's reasonable? What are your thoughts?
Again, it's a statement you had it's in the current plan.
Yep.
Not much has changed from then, has it?
In terms of...
The downtown.
Right.
Well, I still think it's a good idea to do it.
Yeah, well, come on.
Yeah. And, well,
Right.
the cynic in me would say the fact that nothing of substance has happened downtown would be evidence that the policy, that the city has pretty much ignored the policy, that they haven't weighed what's happened elsewhere in terms of commercial development in terms of the downtown. Because you could, right or wrong, you could perhaps argue that if all the land use boards were highly conscious of this and really paid real close attention to it, there might have been developments that they would not have allowed out on Route 6 And the reason being, well, that's going to adversely impact downtown. We don't want that kind of, but I think because the land use boards here have tended to be much more business friendly in that regard, this has not been, even though it's been in the plan, it perhaps has not been given as great attention to as it has, as maybe it should be, or maybe it shouldn't be. It's, you know, but
Personally, I think it's a good thing to have in the plan.
I think it is.
Good, I agree.
Yep.
Last one for tonight, number 29, which in the map on bottom of page 7 talks about maintaining the mixed-use character of Route 229 between Broad Street and Pine Street. But when I went to look at the aerial photograph, it just didn't seem like there's that much going on here.
well,
so.
I think that you've got an old photograph, and this may be moot at this point. Because you have the CVS and Thomas and Savings Bank on the west side of Middle Street, north of Mountain Road. You've got gas stations and some small commercial developments on the east side.
Plus 72.
Plus Route 72, so this may be kind of moot.
So exit out?
There you go.
Yep. Okay. I think that's a good. So at our next meeting, we're picking up on page 17, and the downtown strategies are in here, and then West End Forestville and some other things. Now, the meeting, once we're through this booklet, there's two other things left to go, one of which is the infrastructure booklet, and the second one is we're doing a community survey. We're doing a telephone survey. So, I think at this point in time, our next meeting is October...
Whatever the first Wednesday
in October.
I want to say it's the first.
Can we just for a moment go over some way to try to reduce that stressful situation which occurred early in this meeting?
Sure.
Basically, that was difficult to sit through. It really was. I mean, is that type of antagonism common? I'm new here. That's common?
It depends.
It does
Depends on the topic and
It depends on the players, frankly. But I think it's worth at every meeting, every public meeting, to establish what we want to do. Not a hearing, but a non-hearing. Essentially what we're going to do.
Well, it did create a very
I think that's a
stressful
good idea,
situation.
John, is that whoever comes in, even if we have, like we did the workshop,
Right.
here are our ground rules.
Right.
I don't want, and even, it may have, depending on the type of meeting, it may have been beneficial even in this case to emphasize that this meeting is part of the review for the update of the Plan and Commission Conservation Development, which is our decision, and which we basically at this point are just having discussions on. So,
And there will be a public hearing at the end.
you know, to avoid the...
And I think the process builds in that there's actually multiple opportunities from here on out for public input. So my sense of how our discussions would unfold is that we talk about what we think are good strategies. We share with other people, including the community, to get feedback.
Right.
And then once we've decided on a proposed plan, there's a 65-day window for additional public input before the public hearing.
Yeah, as Glenn mentioned, there's also a long timeline here as it is.
But I
So at this
think-
point, we get bogged
I
down.
think having that ready for people that come in, so when they come in, because we never know who's going to show up.
That's right.
It's not always the same people. And so to have this, little handout, this is what we do.
The road.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay.
I think, in part, there is, on occasion, confusion in the minds of public, sometimes, not everybody, not all the time, between a public meeting and a public hearing. And again, I don't want to suggest that everybody, that nobody understands this, but sometimes, and I think there are people who do and still feel that it's their right to be able to speak. By law, meetings of the Planning Commission and all other boards and commissions are, with very few exceptions that are very clearly spelled out in state statutes, are public meetings, which means the public is allowed to attend. The public is allowed, as Mr. Ruiz does, is allowed to sit at the whole meeting, record it, It's entitled to do that. The commission, whatever board or commission is meeting, cannot make people sign in to be at a meeting. And that's a public meeting, and the ground rules in terms of people's ability to attend and observe is very clearly spelled out in state statutes. But that's not the same as a public hearing, which is typically identified and advertised as a hearing at which people have the right to come in and speak. There's no obligation by any board or commission to allow the public to speak at a public meeting. Many boards and commissions do. City Council does. It's an item on their agenda for public comment. They limit it. That's however they choose to do that. But there's no obligation for any public agency to give the public the opportunity to speak. That's strictly a decision that the commission, as a body, or as or the chair running the meeting makes. And sometimes you do it at your own peril, or something, but that's
With that,
good.
so I want to say something.
You're probably right about state statute as far as a public meeting, but I'm 99% sure our city charter says that at any public meeting that involves a board or commission, that the public has the right to speak. I agree, it shouldn't get out of hand, and I like to be able to interject, and so I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot for saying this, but if you want to limit it, I suggest, if you see a large crowd of people, or you see somebody that you think is going to be unruly or whatever, just hand out, like you said, we're going to have, if you want to comment, we're going to allow it at the beginning of the meeting, but once the meeting starts, that's it. And Robert's rules is 3 to 5 minutes, so you can do it anywhere in there you want. But I like it the way it is.
Yeah. Well, and again, but you can see what can happen.
I know.
And
I think the chairman did a good
job. That's
a
balancing act. I mean, on the one hand, you don't want to cut people out. Because you're doing the public's business. On the other hand, you run the risk of it becoming sort of this endless debate and forum, and you have a literally of an agenda that you're trying to get through. And I think that there's a balance someplace. I'm not going to pretend I know where it is. I'm interested. I'll take a look at the chart. You may be right.
Yeah,
that's true. I was not aware of it. But certainly under state law, there is a difference between a public meeting and a public hearing. You've got to decide, how much or how little you're going to allow the public to participate. Again, you can't shut people out of the meeting. You can't. You can, again, notwithstanding what might be in the charter, you can't say to people, "Oh, we're not going to let you speak." But I mean, if there's nothing in the charter that says that, then the answer is you can say, "This is a meeting, public meeting. You're welcome to observe, take notes, and we're not going to hear from the public, or we're going to wait till the end of the meeting, or whatever you want." But I think in the absence of establishing ground rules, you're sort of...
It's supposed to be relevant. What your comment is supposed to be relevant to what's on the agenda, so you can't, go into the meeting and start ranting about something else.
I think it's important not to engage in a debate. So if the audience is going to, I think everybody should have a chance to make a statement, if you will, in terms of how they feel about something, but if the commission doesn't necessarily say that they agree, not to continue to sort of press the same point, because I think at that point we've got a lot of stuff to cover, so it's a delicate.
Well, that's what happened. I mean, we got stuck on page 6 for a long time.
That's a sticky issue in Bristol.
Well,
it's going to be. If you don't let people speak about it, then it might fuel, a backfire on you.
Until the commission talks about it, though, they don't know what their position is for the people to react to. So it's
exactly. But people also want to interject before things go out on paper, because then it's well, we already did it, and we had a public meeting, you weren't there.
Right, and that kind of thing. And that can be a fair criticism, and I think that what it speaks to is the need for. I think one of the things people have to recognize is that not everybody's going to agree on everything that ends up in the plan.
That's right.
And to the extent that you can reach consensus on as many things as possible by a wide group of people, that's going to make your plan better. But there's going to be some things that not everybody's going to agree on. And I think what people need to understand is at the end of the day, it's this commission that has the responsibility to adopt the plan. To the extent that you have public support, that's a good thing. And I think this commission has done very well in the past with the Route 72 corridor study and the West End study and even the previous plan.
We had a big crowd.
To get people, to get widespread support.
I have an idea.
Yes, John.
These meetings from where I end, wherever they go, for the top purposes of these meetings, let us speak, welcome to speak, because it makes us ideas, but tell them there's no debate, no rebuttal, we're just discussing possible points. And at some point, we're going to put it all together and accept and reject, and then we're going to go back to the public with the official public hearing. That way they get another shot at it, just as they need it. They can speak.
Yeah, I think what would help, and again, it may be some misunderstanding, is that these are working papers. You understand that. Staff understands that. Some members of the public understand it. That this is where you start the conversation. There may be members of the public, and I don't know if it's the case tonight or not, there may be members of the public who see this as kind of the draft of the document. And admittedly, in some way it is. I mean, but as you've done tonight, you've made changes stuff. You said, yeah, we agree. No, we disagree on that stuff. We want that change.
So I'm only going to throw out one more caution, and then I'm going to ask for an adjournment. I'm secretary, and I'm moving it along. The only other thing is that you may get people in the public that have their own agenda and only want to speak about their one item. End of story.
This has to be relevant by charter.
Right.
And that's a good point.
So,
That should be the end of the discussion.
let's do a little ground rules, or something that we can give to the public, and it's time to adjourn, Mr. Chairman. Unless someone's got something else.
Relevant, stress the word relevant.
So you run the meeting?
Yeah, I'm the secretary.
All in favor? Okay, our planning commission meeting is going to be on Tuesday, and I'm not going to be able to make it. They had something going on.
Okay.
But I'll be there for this one.
October 1st. Yeah.